Hello and welcome to the big picture. After months, some would say years, of dilly-dallying, the UPA government has finally come out with the big bang reforms in key sectors of the economy. After yesterday's huge price hike on diesel and LPG, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Reforms this evening cleared 51% FDI in the much-debated multi-brand retail, 49% investment by foreign airlines in the aviation sector, enhancement of FDI in broadcast services to 74%, and disinvestment of 5 public sector units. This decision is being hailed by some sections as a major step towards big-ticket economic reforms and the end of policy paralysis, which the government has been accused of for quite some time now, while the critics are already branding it as a major mistake which would further create crisis in the economy. Are these measures the big boost which the economy required? Are these reform measures on the right track? Is this really the end of policy paralysis in the government? We will discuss all this today with a special panel of guests. With me today is Sitaram Yechury, CPIM leader in the Rajya Sabha, P.C.Chacko, Congress spokesperson, Prof.N.C.Bhanumurthy, economist at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, New Delhi, and will be joined by a guest later. Welcome to all of you. Let me first go to Mr. Chacko. Chacko, is this the end of policy paralysis?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chacko, is this the end
there
of...
was no policy paralysis as such.
Yes.
In fact, there was no policy paralysis as such, but then of course there was some slowdown in the implementation of the various policies, but that was on the cards. It is good that a decision is taken now and the government has to go ahead.
Mr. Chacko, the most controversial decision which has been taken today is about the allowing 51% FDI in multi-brand retail. This is something which some of your own allies are not very happy with. How do you think you and your government will be able to cope with the allies?
No, in fact, the 51% investment in the multi-brand has been on the cards, and we have been discussing this issue for a long time. It is a fact that, some of the allies of the UPA was not in favor of this. But that was not a secret, because that opinion of all the political parties are known on this. But at the same time, being a government which is a reformist government, which has implemented many reform things, where, always wanted to implement this. And it was a process going on, discussing with state government, discussing with various stakeholders, and trying to convince all the political parties and general people in general that this is in the interest of the farmers, this is good in the interest of the foreign investment. So probably to refurbish the economy, to give a boost to the economic growth of the country, this will help. That fact is to be driven home. In fact, that is being discussed for a long time, and today the cabinet has taken a decision. There may be differences, but that can be sorted out by discussion, through discussion.
Mr. Chacko, so you agree that there may still be differences with the allies and you have still not really been able to bring on board all the allies?
No, in fact, in a coalition government, this is bound to happen, and on all issues, the perception of all the parties may not be the same. But the government's general agenda is to be agreed to, because through a process of discussion only we can make the parties agree on this kind of a decision. And I don't think that anybody who supports reforms will stand in the way. But whether it will affect the local interest, that is the local small traders,
right,
whether it will affect the common man, these are all things to be discussed. Probably the government thinks that, this, foreign investment coming in the retail sector will help the farmers to get a better price. Okay. Today the price the farmers are getting and the actual the price consumer is paying, there is a huge gap. Where this money is going? And nobody is able to answer this question. Farmer is getting 5 rupees, retail selling price is 25 rupees. Where the 20 rupees is going? So the farmer should get a better price and the farm gate price should improve. There has to be a cold chain, there has to be a procurement method. This all can be modernized, so foreign investment in this sector will only help.
Okay.
There has to be an Indian participation also. The government will be
anyway,
government will be overseeing all these things. Not
hopefully. Hopefully. Anyway, we will wait and watch how it will take shape. But let me get Mr. Sitaram Yechury in. Sitaram, you heard what the Congress spokesperson is saying. Yes. The FDI in retail, finally they have taken the plunge. What will be the repercussions of this?
Very bad and very adverse as far as both the Indian economy and the people are concerned. Because you see, it is all a myth and an illusion to say the farmer will gain and the consumer will gain, etc. I'll come to that later.
Right.
But first of all, understand that the retail trade sector employs more than 40 million people. And including their families, this means about 200 million Indians, a staggering number of people. Now, if they are displaced from their employment and livelihood, then you are ruining the lives of a large section of our population, nearly 1/5. Now, secondly, this whole mythology that is being spread, that the farmer will get more, all international studies have shown, in stores like the Walmart, for instance, what the producer eventually gets is a very minuscule amount of the total rate at which the product is sold in the supermarket.
Right.
For example, the coffee bean grower, let's say in Ghana, gets 5%. 5% of the value that's been added to it in the terms of chocolate that is sold.
Right.
And therefore, all these illusions is being spread. And I think the only thing that this will do is to give foreign capital extra opportunities in a period of economic crisis and worldwide recession for them to enter the Indian market so that they can maintain and enlarge their profits.
Okay. Sitaram, I have a question on this.
Yes.
Today's decision of the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs clearly specifies that the onus is on the states to allow this FDI in retail in their states or not. See, now the onus is completely on the states. You are lucky that you don't have a government in either West Bengal or Kerala for you to take this decision at this point of time. But clearly the central government has put the onus on every political party which is running different state governments in this country.
Yeah. That is the clever thing about this. That the brownie points will be scored by the Prime Minister and the government with international finance capital, and you'll suddenly find India's credit ratings rise and big pats on the back of the Prime Minister for being bold. And then when this will not happen because for practical reasons this is not good for the country, then the blame is put on the state governments. I don't know what Mr. Chacko will tell me, whether the Kerala government or Mr. Omen-Chandi will implement this. Because they already opposed and asked for a rollback of the diesel price.
Let me get in Chacko on this. Chacko, do you think the Kerala, your government in Kerala would be welcoming this decision on the FDI thing?
In fact, the government of Kerala, as rightly said by Mr. Yechury, has already expressed their reservation on this policy.
Yes.
But it is interesting, and also it is a plus point that this decision is taken as an enabling decision. Any state government who do not want to implement, let them not implement. But the fact remains that any kind of reforms, left parties from the very beginning were opposed to. And Mr. Yechury will be recalling that since 91. Every time when a reform comes, that was totally opposed by left parties. Today, what is the result, Since 91, for the last 20 years, opening up and liberalization in India, whether it has done good to the common man or not. I think ultimately the taste of the pudding is in the eating.
Absolutely.
Here, considering the big reservation many people are having, it.
Okay. Anyway, Mr. Chacko, the question is that, as you rightly pointed out and frankly pointed out, your own government, state government in Kerala has asked for a rollback on the diesel prices. We will come to the issue of diesel prices, which is also a very important issue in this whole reforms package which the government has managed in the last couple of days, today and yesterday. But let me get in my studio guest here, Professor Bhanumurthy. Professor Bhanumurthy, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. That's what Chacko says. The last 20 years, the economic reforms, and now this major reforms push. Where do you think we are heading?
Well, I think even after 2 decades of reforms, the fear of foreign competition is still there in most of the sectors. And that's what is really clearly coming out among the political parties when they really talk about FDI and retail and many other foreign investments. But having said that, I would like to add one thing. You may be right when you say that the policy paralysis is really ending. But I think what is happening in the recent period is the policy reversals, which is much more riskier than the policy paralysis.
And damaging.
And damaging. So now, even after the decisions that have they taken yesterday and today, we are not really sure whether the policy reversal stage has really gone off. And as you see, I mean, there are lots of agitations are going to start in many parts of the country. But my feeling is that the agriculture sector, which has been really kept aside in the overall growth
So do you
process.
think that the FDI in retail will help the agriculture sector?
See, we never experimented in Indian context, but whatever experiment that we have right now for the past, in the post-independence, we clearly know that it's not really helping much in terms of price discovery or in terms of standard of living in the among the agricultural farmers. And whatever the existing situation that we have, it's not really showing that the farmers are really benefiting out of it. So the overall price discovery, and also at the same time, agriculture has to be treated as an industry. Like, you may be really floating a lot of international examples, but in India, I think agriculture seems to be kept out of all the policy changes.
Professor Bhanumurthy, the question now is, as Sitaram was pointing out, the international studies have shown that these multi-brand retail chains which come really do not help the farmers. Do you agree with that, or do you have a different view?
I think even in India, there are some studies done by respectable academic institutions. Their conclusions are slightly different from what Mr. Yechury is saying. I think it's important for us to really come out and say that price discovery in India right now is not really happening much, not helping for the agriculture sector.
So you think that the FDI in retail, multi-brand retail, when it comes in, these big chains come in, this will help the agriculture sector, and all these concerns which are being expressed that, you know, it will finish the small traders are just concerns, and they are not real concerns?
No, I think employment is definitely a major concern when really you allow the FDI in retail happening. Of course, there may be some supporting mechanism that needs to be developed to really reduce the negative impacts of the FDI in retail that we are introducing.
Okay, Mr. Chacko, it's very interesting. There is a report which has come today, which has come just about half an hour back, indicating what happened in the meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Economic Reforms, and Prime Minister has been quoted. I am not saying that this is fully confirmed, but this report interestingly says the Prime Minister at the meeting said, if we have to go down, we will go down fighting, which means that there is. Do you think that there is still an element of doubts within the government while introducing these big measures?
Not because of any doubt in the mind of Congress or Prime Minister, but the fact remains that, for anything and everything, it is a blame game of the opposition, The government, if they wait for the people's opinion, if they act something, equally they are being blamed. They are not being allowed to implement programs and policies. Here is a situation where Prime Minister has taken the courage to come out and say that if at all does not mean that we are going to face a crisis. But the question is that, reforms started in India since 91 till today. All these steps were tooth and nail opposed by most of the left-wing parties and also by other parties.
Right.
Similarly, now this FDI in retail also is being opposed. And we cannot compare India's problem with any other country other than China. What is the study made in other countries in small economies may not be comparable, may not be useful for us. Okay. You see, in China, FDI retail is 51% and 75% is also allowed in China.
Yes,
what does it mean?
Yes, okay.
Quite competent to
Mr. Chacko, Mr. Chacko, Sitaram has a point which he wants to talk about. Okay, Sitaram.
Yeah, you see, if the proof of the pudding is in the eating, let us see what has been the proof in the last 20 years. After the last 20 years of reform, what do you have in India today? 54 billionaires whose individual assets put together is 1/3 of India's GDP. And over 80 crores or about 800 million, a staggering 800 million people surviving on less than 20 rupees a day. These are government figures.
Right.
If this is the pudding, then the proof is there for you to eat. And what is the state of the economy today? 6.9% fiscal deficit.
Right.
One of your worst current account balance of trade deficits.
Right.
And you have a runaway inflation. And what was the situation in 91 and what is the situation in 2011, 12?
Sitaram,
In terms of microeconomic parameters, we are very, very similar, frighteningly similar.
Sitaram, the proponents of these reforms apparently think that these were the measures needed to bring down all those things which you have pointed out. Anyway, we will continue this.
No. The second thing, let me also just give me a minute. Give me a minute. You see, the whole point is these reforms. The Prime Minister has said that we'll go down fighting. Well, I don't know in which context you said what was quoted. I mean, to be fair, I don't want to enter that. But I would only urge the Prime Minister to go down fighting for the Indian people and not for foreign capital to make more profits.
Okay. We will continue this discussion. We have to discuss the very important issue of the diesel price hike and the LPG hike. We need to go into a short break now. Please keep watching. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. We are discussing the big reform measures which the government has announced today on allowing FDI in multi-brand retail and yesterday's decision to hike the diesel prices and asking the question whether all these are on the right track. Let me go to Chacko. Chacko, the issue of the price, the hike in price of diesel. Enormous hike, 5 rupees, which actually, works out to about almost 6 rupees if you include the VAT and all that. Was this something which had to be done? There are different arguments on this whole issue, but how does the government defend this huge price hike in diesel?
This is in fact, not a welcome decision. The government did not want to take a decision like this. This proposal was before the government for the last many months. The fact remains that the oil marketing companies in India is suffering a huge loss to the tune of 1,86,000 crores of rupees. And this kind of under recovery and the loss suffered by the oil marketing companies cannot continue. So the government, not that government is happy in taking a decision in hiking the price of diesel or petrol. But when the decision was taken yesterday, government was very cautious. Petrol prices were not increased. How? The government suffered 4 rupees 55 paise excise duty. They sacrificed that, and that is why they did not increase the price of petrol. And the subsidy on diesel, which was a huge amount, a slight improvement increase was made. Even that will have a cascading effect, we are afraid. So the Congress party also, along with many other parties, wanted this to be postponed or not to be taken. And we were just waiting, but every day the international crude price is soaring. Indian rupees price exchange vis-a-vis with the dollar is also falling. These two aspects taken together, the losses is bounding.
Okay.
What any government could have done.
Okay.
And we have taken a decision.
Okay, Mr. Chacko, according to your government,
not happily, with reluctance, with a lot of reluctance.
Okay. Your argument is that there's a lot of losses taking place, under recoveries are happening, and your government yesterday's press release states that even after all these things, still 1,67,000 crore under recovery is going to be there this year. Sitaram, this is a subject on which you have been talking for a long number of years. Yes. Now the issue of under recoveries. Do you agree that these under recoveries are losses?
Not at all. This is a big mythology again that is being spread. It's an illusion. Under recoveries are not losses at all. Let us put the record straight first. The audited reports, audited accounts reports of the 4 major oil companies, ONGC, reported a net profit after tax of 25,000 plus crores of rupees. Your IOC reported a net profit of close to 4,300 crores of rupees. your HPCL, your BPCL report a profit of 1,500 and nearly 1,000 crores of rupees. So where are the losses? This is a myth to say these under recoveries are losses, because please understand what are under recoveries. Today you had the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission also say that Indian fuel prices should be on par with international prices. Pray tell me why? 90% of what we import is crude. We process that crude in India to produce petrol, diesel, kerosene, etc., etc.
Right.
Now, the cost should be, what should be is the price of what you imported plus your cost of refining.
Right.
Why do you have to align with the international prices? And the Congress leaders seem to forget, it was their erstwhile leader Indira Gandhi. On that occasion, we supported her when she nationalized all these foreign oil companies. At that time, Indian price used to be on par with international prices. Once you have nationalized them, why are you still talking about international prices and being on par with them?
Sitaram,
and that is the biggest fraud that is being committed on the people.
Okay, Sitaram, I have Professor Bhanumurthy here. In fact, he has done a paper on this entire issue recently. Professor Bhanumurthy, Sitaram's argument is this about this import parity price. What is your view on this? Is this import parity price, as Sitaram says and many other people also say, is it something which is being used to fool people of this country?
No, I think if you see the PPAC, which actually estimate that under recoveries, they actually follow the similar methodology what Mr. Yechury is saying. But if you add the tax component, which is very huge, both central and state government.
Almost 60%, sometimes 80%.
Yeah, 40% is the taxes. So it is.
So in case of petrol, I'm told it's even over 80%.
Right. So in the sense that if you follow the same methodology and add the taxes, it's actually come to the under recoveries what oil companies are saying. There may be some issues on the kind of methodology, the kind of prices that they are using at the border prices. But I think it's very clear that the diesel prices have been really subsidized. There is no second opinion on that.
So what is now this issue of import parity price? Is this something which needs to be adopted? Because we had given it up. It was brought back again in 2002, right?
Right.
Where was there a need to bring it back?
Well, I think if you're not really aligning with the international prices, there need to be some kind of methodology that needs to be developed, so that you also cover the losses for the oil companies, and the kind of the committee recommendation.
No, but what Sitaram Yechury is saying is all the oil companies, all the 4 major oil companies have shown profits. And how do you say that they are incurring losses?
Well, I think
why are these profits being shown?
They have been really floated on the stock market. I mean, it is not completely owned by the public sector. I mean, the government. I think there are stacks by the private people also. So you cannot say that why they are declaring profits. They have to declare profit because they.
So they are actually okay. Let me get. We got Soma Banerjee of the Economic Times with us. Welcome, Soma.
Hi.
Soma, this whole issue of import parity price.
Yeah, I was just wanting to come on in
that.
Because,
import and Sitaram just pointed out that all the 4 major oil companies repeatedly have been showing profits, and then the government says that they are incurring losses. What is this whole conundrum?
I find Mr. Yechury is much wiser and smarter to know what the truth is. Political rhetorics apart, how can we have a national price for crude oil when more than 70% of the crude oil is actually bought from outside? We import the crude oil. Right. So the price of the raw material is actually paid in dollars. We cannot really be very divorced from that when we are looking at the price of the product. Right. Because the raw material is, 80% now almost we're going to import. So just about 20% is what we're getting from the country. And we're not looking at an import parity price anymore. I'd like to correct Mr. Yechury. We're looking at something called a trade parity price, which takes into effect exports and imports and comes at a ratio. That's as far as import parity is concerned. The second question is as far as profits of oil companies are concerned. Again, I'm surprised that Mr. Yechury makes this point, because he knows that there are supplementary budgets passed every year in Parliament. I'm sure they vote too, where they dole out money to these oil companies so that they can be in the black. Otherwise, they are in the red. We've seen it in quarter results. So if you do not give them those subsidies, these companies are not making profits. Let's not fool ourselves. These companies which were on Fortune 500 companies are not there on that list anymore. So, I mean, whether you like it or not, you have already ruined, you know.
Yes, Sitaram, okay, Sitaram.
This is all, you see, the point is, it's a very wrong thing to, I mean, you misunderstood completely. I said we import crude oil, we refine it in India.
Right.
True.
The price should be on the basis of the refining costs, not on the basis of dollars we pay for 80% we import. You got the entire thing completely wrong there. And whether it's import parity price or trade parity price, it eventually comes to what is the exports that India does of oil products? Virtually nothing. It is that, and again, don't get me wrong, it is not the supplementary grants that we dole out to oil companies. Please look at all their quarterly reports. Please look at all their quarterly reports. And secondly, and this is a question that needs to be posed, Mr. Nikam, that you have the revenue from taxes from the oil sector coming to the tune of 1,30,000 crores last year.
Absolutely.
And your subsidies that you announced in the budget were 40,000 crores.
Right.
So who's subsidizing whom? People are subsidizing the government to the tune of 90,000 crores on these oil products. And you want them to face the burdens again?
Okay. In fact, Sitaram, I have Professor Bhanumurthy here. In his paper, he has, there's a very interesting aspect in your paper which I was reading. It says that the contribution of petroleum sector to the exchequer is 2.8% of the GDP. And you say that the total revenue expenditure of petroleum sector is less than 0.4%. And you say that this revenue expenditure is mostly subsidies.
This is only the subsidy component. Right. But if we add the under recoveries, which is not been covered by the government.
Under recoveries?
Under recovery, it comes to around 1.5% or 1.6%.
Okay, 1.5%, which means that 2.8% is the revenue is what the government gets from the petroleum sector, and it's spending 1.4% toward in this. Still there is a and still with a Sitaram, how do you explain this?
Very simple.
2.8% is the GDP of the GDP. 1.4% is the revenue. I mean, is the revenue expenditure.
Yeah. I mean, you see, revenue expenditure also is if you add on the under recovery, so-called under recoveries.
After adding the under recovery.
After adding the under recovery.
Right.
So even after adding the great under recoveries, that becomes an excuse for price hikes. What the government is getting is double what it is spending.
Okay.
And therefore, there's entire talk of saying unbearable subsidies.
Okay.
And this is a myth. I mean, if you give me just a minute.
We are completely running out of time.
Just 1 minute.
Not even a minute. We can
just 1 minute.
Yes.
You see, there's entire question. Please consider the following figures. Last budget, you say 5,28,000 crores of tax concessions. Your fiscal deficit is 5,22,000 crores. If those tax concessions were not there, which are subsidies to the rich, if those subsidies to the rich are not there, there is no fiscal deficit in our country.
That argument of yours has been well argued. And anyway, now I'm very sorry, Mr. Professor Bhanumurthy also wanted to make a point, but we are completely run out of time. We hope to have another discussion on this issue because it's not something which we can do in half an hour. Anyway, thanks to all my guests, Sitaram, Yechury, P.C.Chacko, Soma, Banerjee, and Professor Bhanumurthy. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on the big picture same time tomorrow.